This week, Paddy Harrington from Forrester Research is with us to discuss enterprise browsers. Then Sean Metcalf from Trimark joins us to talk about Microsoft identity security issues. Finally, in the enterprise security news, funding rounds are back. We've got a bunch of them this week. Bitwarden raises $100 million for password management. Simulate raises $70 million for something I guess we're not calling BAS anymore. And a ton more Series A, Series B, and seed announcements from vendors just coming out of stealth. Ethereum's merge completes and moves to proof of stake. Some updates on the Twitter apocalypse, the latest in annoying buzzword innovation, and some cyber insurance trends that I promise are more interesting than I just made that sound. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
The shift to remote and hybrid work over the past 2 years has accelerated application development on cloud infrastructure. However, securing these new assets has lagged behind. Qualys CloudView, the next generation of cloud security posture management, delivers an end-to-end multi-cloud security and compliance solution encompassing the entire application lifecycle from build to runtime. CloudView enables enterprises to assess their cloud security and compliance posture, identify risks and gaps, auto-remediate issues, proactively enforce best practices, and prove compliance in audits rapidly and efficiently. Identify your most vulnerable cloud assets by visiting securityweekly.com/Qualys. Customers want fast and frictionless digital experiences, yet also expect protection against breaches, privacy violations, and fraud. Drive engagement by optimizing security and convenience to attract and retain customers. Use the PingOne cloud platform to build, test, and optimize digital experiences. The no-code orchestration engine weaves together authentication, user management, and MFA, all of which can enhance security, drive engagement, and boost revenues. Visit securityweekly.com/ping identity to learn more. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Pawpaw Day. Not your grandfather, the fruit. This is episode 288, recorded on Thursday, September 15th, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, Tyler Shields. How are you, Tyler?
Hey, I've never heard of that fruit in my entire life. Have you ever had it?
I had it for the first time on Tuesday. And so it kind of serendipity that it happens to be National Pawpaw Day, because on Tuesday, I would have just overlooked this great national holiday and also not even known what it was. But somebody brought a couple to trivia night at the brewery, and I got to sample one. It's kind of like different people said different things. I thought it was kind of like a mix between like a mango and a pear.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. A little known fact about the pawpaw tree: it is the largest edible fruit tree native to North America.
I'd recommend eating just the fruit, not the tree.
Yes.
I did not know that. I didn't even know it was native. I thought when they brought it, I assumed this was like some, crazy fruit that they have to import from somewhere else. Had no idea. You don't see it at the grocery store.
Yeah, my Google Foo is fast, and when you do a podcast, if you can Google faster than others, you can get fun facts out.
Oh yeah, you can sound like a genius. That's a skill worth developing. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Also joining us is the czar of Zero Trust, the captain of content, Katie Teitler. How are you, Katie?
I'm well. I have never had a pawpaw myself, and I'm wondering what it tastes like since you just recently tried it.
Yeah, so one of the regulars there just has several pawpaw trees in his yard, and he just gathers them up.
Of course,
yeah.
Who doesn't?
Right. I don't think I've ever come across. I've lived here for well over 30 years, and I don't think I've ever come across pawpaws. So interesting. Yeah, and they're good fruit. Tasted good. I don't know why they're not more popular. So I guess that's why somebody came up with a national holiday for pawpaws.
Perhaps your show will evangelize the pawpaw. It will become the next big trend for 2023.
This is the pawpaw tipping point right here, right now. We're all experiencing
it. Right now.
We'll see pawpaw smoothies, pawpaw pies. Next thing you know, you'll be driving through Chick-fil-A and having a pawpaw smoothie, ordering a pawpaw smoothie. Actually, the guy who has them in his yard, he brought a ton of them to the brewer at this brewery where we have trivia every Tuesday night. And the brewer there is going to make a beer out of them. He's going to turn them into beautiful, wonderful beer. All right, a few announcements here. Security Weekly listeners can save 20% on InfoSec World 2022 passes. InfoSec World will be held September 27th through the 29th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. So it's coming up very soon, just a couple weeks from today. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW and use the code ISW22-SecWeek20 to secure your spot now. I feel like we can make those codes easier, a little bit easier for people to remember, especially just hearing this on audio. But go to securityweekly.com/ISW, and we probably have the code listed there, so you don't have to remember what I just said. All right. For today's first interview, we're talking about enterprise browsers, unicorns or trophy winners. It's a topic we've talked about a lot on the show. It felt like it came out of left field, especially, I think two of the big ones here came out of stealth with $100 million in funding already. So really caught our attention, and we've been talking about it ever since. So I'm glad we have somebody who writes on this topic. We've got Paddy Harrington, who's a senior analyst from Forrester Research and covers this and some other areas in his coverage there at Forrester. Paddy spent a ton of time at Citrix before coming to Forrester, so we'll talk about that a bit and how that's a good background for this particular topic. So obviously he's very familiar with secure application delivery, VDI, and all that stuff. Welcome, Paddy.
Thanks, Adrian.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and start there. Spent a lot of time with Citrix at Citrix. Why does that make help us with, maybe not everybody's familiar with what Citrix, what kind of products they have, what they do, bring us up to, why Citrix is an interesting background for this conversation.
Sure. So a lot of people who know of Citrix know of them as the VDI company. Mm-hmm. They sort of revolutionized that world because they were doing it way back in the 90s. So before folks like VMware or even Microsoft with like Azure Virtual Desktop are doing the whole VDI thing, Citrix was doing this with things like WinView and WinFrame and MetaFrame, and the branding just gets weird from there. But one of the things that they did, as we're talking about browsers here, is a common use case for this whole VDI world was publishing a browser. So you now had a centrally controlled and delivered browser that you could manage from one place, and you didn't care what connected. You could deliver it to any endpoint, and it was all great stuff. Well, applications just kept getting more webified. Hate the term, but it fits. And this is where solutions like NetScaler came into the picture. So Citrix acquired NetScaler and their application delivery controller solution, so load balancing and all the other fun things you can do with websites. And from that time, that's where Citrix had to evolve to not only do the VDI stuff that everyone knew, but full application delivery. And all that application delivery stuff was all web-based. So they've been in an interesting spot when it comes to getting applications out in the web. And as the solutions of zero trust network access started to grow and take hold and replace some of the VPN stuff that was out there, that was another thing that they picked up on. So, and everyone else was doing it in the market as well. Folks like Zscaler, for example, and Zscaler was actually using their zero trust network access solution as a competition to folks like Citrix or VMware with their Horizon suite and stuff to say, you don't need to centrally host a browser. and deliver it out virtually to users, use our secure delivery solution with ZTNA, whatever browser you have locally, then we'll control access to your web applications.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting space because there's so many different ways of trying to deliver on this, and also something we'll talk about are the use cases. Because that's changed a bit over the years as well, and I kind of consider this the second, kind of the second round of secure enterprise browser startups. First round we had back in like 2013, 2015, to further help meta-frame the conversation. Let's talk a bit about, are you familiar with those guys? Like the Authenticate Silo, like all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I had heard of them briefly back in that period. I mean, so 2013, I was deep into the Citrix world. I was a sales engineering manager here in the Mid-Atlantic. And, I had heard them come up, but it was kind of one of those, push it aside.
Yeah, so I can cover it real quick because I was actually an industry analyst over at 451 Research, and this was one of the areas I covered because I covered endpoint security, and that was very much one of the use cases. One of the value props was, okay, so your browser actually lives in a cloud or a data center somewhere, and we're just going to stream the browser session to you. So if there's anything malicious in the browser session, it's going to be isolated to that data center. It's not going to get onto your desktop. It's not going to spread to the rest of your company. And they made it easy to reset those sessions. There was a lot of the IP was like, how do we detect if there is something malicious embedded within the session? And then it's kind of like like a lot of them went in slightly different directions there. Like Authenticate Silo kind of turned into like a threat hunting tool. So you could actually make your browser look like it was coming from different places around the world, much like people use these consumer VPNs today to view geolocked content and things like that. In cases where, as part of your research, you need to look like you're coming from somewhere else, or you don't want to look like you're coming from whatever company you're working for. They threw in some of those features as well. But, I think one of the things that prevented it from going mainstream was that these browsers were kind of created from the ground up. They weren't as sturdy and compatible as the mainstream browsers, and they broke a lot of workflows. Like if you wanted to print, it was kind of a kludgy workflow to get that done. Certain websites didn't work right, like they were using off-the-shelf rendering engines, but the interface looked totally different, so people would have to relearn to use the interface. And I think that turned off a lot of folks. And at least that bit of it, it seems like the current enterprise browsers we're seeing are not making those same mistakes. And not really going after the we protect you from malware use cases much, or am I wrong in that?
Well, that's the thing, is they're trying to blend both of those worlds. And, so it was funny, the Authenticate stuff, the more you talked about it, it started ringing in my head. I'm a little bit of an older person, so the memory doesn't work as well as it used to. But, we had seen that as in the Citrix world, and it was kind of one of those, well, we can do the exact same thing, and that probably spawned the whole remote browser isolation battle that just keeps evolving. What the modern enterprise browsers, what they're doing is they're taking away some of the compatibility issues, because we all know Chrome dominates. Chrome and Chromium dominate so much that the number 2 browser in the market, Microsoft Edge, is built on Chromium now, as opposed to a proprietary build that Microsoft did. So with that, the enterprise browsers, at least the current ones in the market, are all based off Chrome. So it's using Chromium. So they're at an advantage than the predecessors in that they're not building their own stuff. They're using a common platform that the industry, if you will, has adopted, everyone except for Apple. So they can support the same applications. They can do all that great stuff. But you mentioned the threat protection side, and I think this is where things get interesting, because they have some capabilities of that. Or if you look at what Talon did at RSA, and what they announced, a partnership with CrowdStrike, right? So even though these are smaller companies, by and large, right? They don't have the history of some of these other folks. They're going to integrate with other threat protection solutions to be able to add on what they can do inside the browser and stuff that they just don't have the capacity to do inside of their company just because they don't have 10,000 people writing code and doing threat protection and threat hunting.
Yeah, certainly they've got the money to hire a significant amount of people. Like the growth we're seeing in these companies. Like some of the conversations we have is, how logistically, how do you even hire 250 people in half a year for one of these security startups? It's incredible. But yeah, Island and Talon are the two big ones that I hear about the most. I hear there are some others that haven't come out of stealth yet. So we're going to have more in this market. It's not going to be, doesn't seem like it's going to be like Bromium and Invincia was in the past, where you only had two players, and then Invincia kind of pivoted onto the next gen antivirus route, and then it was just Bromium, which still exists. We actually had HP acquire them, and we had somebody from HP on a couple months ago. We had a sponsored segment from them. So that niche, that needs the isolation or wants the isolation on, the system itself. Clearly somebody's finding some value in that, but this seems like it's intended to be more mainstream, especially with the amount of money that they're pulling in. But I'd be interested in your opinion. To me, it still feels like it's going to be a niche, not something that you buy for your entire enterprise, but maybe, just specific people who are more targeted or, have a need for more security, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting market, as you say, because there's two main players in this space, right, who've become public. There's a third who was there, but no one thought of it as an enterprise browser. And funny enough, that was also Citrix. So Citrix, a couple of years back, released what they call the Workspace browser. And it was part of their Workspace app. And there was a way that they could launch the Zero Trust Network access applications, right, just the websites, through a more controlled browser. The initial releases of it were fairly basic, and they could do some simple controls, but they've evolved it over time. And it does have a lot of full features. Now, they include it as part of their secure private access product, but it is technically, if you look at it and you compare it against some of the stuff that Island and Talon are doing, it's roughly the same. All of them have different approaches to stuff, right? And different approaches to how they do disk file encryption and how they report back to the central control and stuff. So I think this market has some legs. And like you said, this may not be an enterprise-wide solution, but one of the use cases in talking with a client of one of the customers, or one of the companies, they think they may go enterprise-wide for use cases. So right now, one of the use cases is on contractor access, right? So
sure, yeah. I've heard that one a lot.
So instead of giving them a corporate laptop, right, that they have to manage and control, since all their applications are browser-based anyways, well, they give them just this browser. So now, they've gone from shipping out hardware to here's a browser, we can control the browser, control all the things inside of it, do a lot of nice little features and functions. And if we want to get rid of you as a contractor, your contract is up, or you've violated rules or whatnot, well, we just
throw a switch,
shut off your account. Yeah, exactly, right? So, but they also see this as, well, what if we do the same thing for BYO, right? And that's where I think it gets more interesting, because BYO has been blowing up over the last few years. I worked on a report here at Forrester, State of Endpoint Security, and one of the things found in doing the research in that is the majority of folks that we surveyed, right, these were IT decision leaders, said that they have BYO across the board. And what I mean is Windows, Mac, smartphones, and all those things. Smartphones have been there for a while, but the Mac and Windows thing really surprised me. Because it's not, we're talking, 51%. It's more than that. and this was, we'll say as recent research as we had. So I'm interested to see what the latest 2022 data says. So with that, and if all of your applications are browser-based, maybe this is the right solution for you.
Yeah.
But we're early. We are way early. We haven't even hit the 1 year since Talon came out of stealth.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the websites, it's kind of a laundry list of like, here's all the things we could do with this technology. It's like, oh, okay, but you're like, I don't know if you're going to do all that stuff. Like some of that sounds a little ambitious, or it seems like even them, with these products, they're still trying to figure out what that market fit is, right? Like what features. What that killer feature is going to be to really lock them in with an enterprise customer for multi years.
Yeah. I think one of the use cases I've heard them talk about is removing VDI. Oh, you can get rid of VDI when you do this.
Oh, as a replacement.
The ZTNA players have been saying the same thing, and it's across the board. They've all been saying this. The problem is not all applications are web-based. And that's a major use case for VDI solutions. Horizon, Citrix, like I said, Azure Virtual Desktop, is those applications that have to be installed. Well, a browser, okay, maybe it can get you access into the VDI solution, right? So it gives you additional control to other websites that you're going to deliver, plus the VDI. But for those use cases, you're not going to blow out your VDI solution. It's just not going to happen. So I appreciate it, but you're not going to be able to rip out a lot of these enterprise VDI deployments because of why they're using it.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about how I covered enterprise security products, and I was there when the whole next gen AV movement started. Where Cylance and SentinelOne and CrowdStrike were the big ones, and for a long time they couldn't replace traditional enterprise protection suites, traditional AV. So that was the question from me, that I'm sure they got sick of me asking is, okay, but when are you going to replace Symantec and McAfee and all these traditional players? But back then it was very clear that was going to have to happen. Eventually, they were eventually going to have to put together all those EPP features that would allow them to fully replace a Symantec, because a lot of companies just couldn't afford, and certainly you didn't want to run side by side too many of these endpoint security agents, and pay for both of them long term. But you needed to do something because people were just AV wasn't catching stuff. People were getting hit pretty hard. But yeah, here it's less clear to me. So maybe share some other examples of features and use cases, stuff I can't do with maybe a Citrix or or maybe there's more feature parity than that, but are they doing any interesting stuff that jumped out at you that, oh, that's cool, that's something I can't do right now with what I've got?
Yeah, and I think this is where it gets interesting, because one of the detractions people may throw at them is, well, I have Chrome and I'm managing Chrome, or Edge and I'm managing Edge, right? So I've got all those great tools inside there. Why do I need you? I'm already doing browser management. The thing is, Chrome and Edge, Safari, whatever, they don't have some of the features. One of them that is really nice, it's the screen and keyboard protection, right? So protecting against screen grabbers, potentially even Zoom, right? Or a keylogger in the background. Now, people can say, well, okay, hey, I have an agent I can run on the endpoint that can do that, right? And there are some solutions out there. Sentry Bay has a solution that does that. That's fine. But this is inside the browser, right? So you don't need an additional agent, and it's per application, meaning per tab. So you're in one tab, you've got it open, and you're trying to share that tab in a team meeting. You mistakenly click on another tab, and it's a financial application. Well, the screen protection is applied on the second tab.
And it prevents you from making that mistake.
Exactly. And I think that's a key use case when you think of delivering secure applications to your entire user base. A person who has access to those financial data, you can really say, lock it down, turn on all those fun features and protections. They can't download out of that application. They can download out of another one, but they can't download out of that. And these are some things that, without a dozen extensions that you have to keep and maintain from various companies. You're not going to get that out of a Chrome or an Edge or straight Safari.
Yeah, and the thing so I'm always thinking of, okay, where is this going to fall down? Where is this going to break? And I'm reminded of the application control when that was real big in the late 2000s. Everybody was saying, we'll just lock down, like only this list of applications can run, and then malware doesn't work anymore. Super easy. And just not thinking about the management nightmare that would create. And once we start talking about like, okay, this tab has these controls, this is an enterprise app, this tab has these controls. Again, you've got management overhead there. I imagine that you're going to have to take into account when configuring this thing for these different use cases. Like CASB, when it came out, it was the same thing. It was amazing what was possible with CASB. But most of the customers I talked to that were early adopters that were using it, were barely able to use 1% of the product because they just didn't have the time to dream up the use cases, to implement the use cases, and put all this into, make the dream real, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny enough, it goes back to, since we started a lot of this talk on VDI things and Citrix, some of the early implementations that I did way back, when I was a junior button pusher, we did an install for an insurance company, and we started with one application in one division. And, by the time that insurance company got bought by someone else, we had it across multiple departments and divisions. The application list blew up. We went from 1 to, I think, 50 or 60, and I think this could be a play for that. Obviously, we're going to have to see how it matures and how it grows out. But when you start with, like I said, that customer who is doing it for contractor access, and it's really specific contractors, that gives it a starting point. And it's these early adopters that lets them try it out. Is this going to work for us broad, long term? And can we really make this something? And they'll figure it out. I don't think this is going to be by the end of next year. They're going to have everyone in the Fortune 500 wall to wall, and it's all going to be fantastic. This is going to be a process as it kind of works itself out. And if a few more players enter the market, I think if there's other people who get involved in this, who see value in this, and customers start showing, yeah, we really like what this can do, that's when I think this starts to take off. If it stays in this 2, 3, 4, it'll be a niche product for a while, and maybe they'll get acquired by a Google and all the features will be incorporated in.
Yeah, and I just I think we have to be really careful with this one, because as I'm scrolling through the websites, looking at their examples and things like that, and even one you shared with me that I found really compelling and interesting, there are just all kinds of opportunities for foot gunning, for breaking business processes here, because a lot of it's based on actively preventing people from doing things like copying and pasting. A lot of workflows are going to be very dependent on copying and pasting. I remember when banks started preventing you from pasting into fields, and all of a sudden your password managers don't work anymore. Like that was a big pain for people. And, because like I have my password manager generate this crazy 30-character password, and now I have to type it in manually because my bank is protecting me by not letting me paste into the password field. Those types of situations. And the one that I think you were talking about that I found interesting is that these browsers can encrypt a file that you download so that it can only be read in the browser. So you can't then slap it onto a flash drive or something like that. And, so the file is useful. Already I'm using my web browser as my PDF viewer anyway. So that seems like one of those things that could be really, really useful, but then you have to be careful, now your CEO can't close a deal because they can't download something as a PDF and mail it to the prospect, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's you can also see some reasons to do that for preventing malware, right? So in a PDF, for example, if someone tried to embed malware in the PDF. And that happens. That's a common attack vector, really. Okay, this is a great way that you can't run it outside of the browser and infect your machine. But if you look at some of the other RBI-based solutions, right, the remote browser isolation solutions out there, some of them can do DOM rendering. In part of the DOM rendering, they will also re-render PDFs, Word docs, Excel files. Now, that can also break functions in those apps, but at the same time, they can render out that malware. So, it's a benefit, and I like it. I like what it can do, and they take different approaches to it, right? Talon, Island, they do different things in how they're encrypting. But like I said, how much of the process is it going to break? Is that a good or bad thing? Because you don't want them going outside the process. But we all know users go out of the process because they just want to get the work done, and you're impeding them. So,
yeah, and that's a tough one too. I imagine they're going to have to come up with some solution to prevent people from doing that. Maybe you have an enterprise application that only works if you access it through Talon or something like that, or through Island. So it'll be interesting to see how. Yeah.
I mean, you can do that with some of the DNS records and things of that nature. So you can force it to say, oh, you're trying to access this application from, a Chrome variant or something, Brave. And it says, no, you have to go through the Talon browser. Yeah. Here's the link for it, and please download it.
Yeah. So I understand you have some reports coming out, or you've got a report coming out on particularly this space.
Yeah, so it's a report on just browser security in the anywhere workspace, and it's been interesting digging into it because we're looking into the enterprise browsers, looking into RBI and some of the fun stuff that's been going on with and how that's changed, as well as looking at some of the other ways to secure the browser. I mean, you're talking local isolation in the past, right, with Bromium. Well, Isolate is a solution that was doing something similar of local isolation. They got picked up by Perception Point. So, we're trying to provide some insight into all these solutions for our customers so they've got a general understanding of what this all does and give them some recommendations on the best use cases for all of this.
As an industry analyst should, that was one of my favorite things about that job was, I naturally want to click all the things, try out all the things, understand how things work. So I was already doing that work for my own curiosity. So, I learned that there was a job where you get paid to do that for others. So worked out really well for me.
Cool.
It is. It's a very cool gig. Yeah. All right. Paddy, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Cool. Thanks, Adrian.
All right, and stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk Microsoft identity security issues with Sean Metcalf from TriMark.